And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series. Today is the 8th in a 14 video series walking through the correct reading order of Superman by DC Comics. To create this reading guide I have read the 1670 plus comic issues that comprise all of Superman's continuity from 1991 to 2011. That includes spin-offs, miniseries and events, and I've used that knowledge to build this, the internet's most detailed reading guide for the world's most famous superhero. This guide's going to take the form of a Google Sheet. I've split into 14 tabs representing the 14 discrete eras I've split this period of reading into. This can be viewed and downloaded for free from my website. Generally, each era or tab is separated by a major DC event that I'm also going to be releasing a separate video on. This playlist is going to contain every single Superman video and every single DC event video in chronological order. However, if you're only interested in the DC events, they're also collected in a separate, dedicated 11 video playlist that's going to be available separately on the channel. I always stress this, please do watch the introductory video to this series before you go any further, because that will explain what I'm referring to when I start talking about Superman triangle numbers. It will explain why I started this reading guide in 1991 rather than any earlier than that, and it will also explain terms that I use such as type P or type J reader. So with no further ado, let's look straight at the 8th era, which is here. This is the Google Sheet. This is how it works. You can see all the different eras on the bottom, and today we are starting the 8th era. Last time we did the 7th era, which was from December 1998 to December 1999. Sorry, December 98 to November 99, and that was the issue directly after DC 1 million up to the Day of Judgment. So today we're going from Day of Judgment all the way up to an event called Our Worlds at War. That means we're going from December 1999 all the way through to October 2001. That's 99 issues in total. So buckle up, it is going to be quite a long video. One thing I'll say before we even dive into it is that interestingly, this moment marks kind of a major watershed for the Superman comics. Jeff Loeb is coming on board and he replaces Dan Jurgens, who has been in the series for decades. The four series that you can see here as well at the top, they also now kind of untether from each other somewhat, with a loose connectivity between them, but now a stronger continuity along the particular lines. They do still keep the triangle numbering for now, but we will see that disappear soon enough as well. We're also now entering a new era of trade collection. This is what I like to call the White Spine era, which collects together issues in what seems to be a semi-coherent fashion for a while. However, I remain unconvinced these are a decent way to actually curate them, so I'm going to continue to refer you to the name and condition collected editions overview that I mentioned in the introductory video, and I've got links in the description to that video, sort of going through how the physical collections are currently collected. But because the physical collections are collected in a bit of a mess, and I stand by that, we're going to continue our reading guide on an arc by arc basis. Another thing just to point out is that there is a really perceptible shift in terms of the quality here. The artwork, the writing, the print and production quality of the issues, as well as the actual stories themselves. Professor Hamilton, who kind of performs his role as being the man in the chair, is gone. There's no more nonsense about Kandor or Intergang. You've got better art, better colouring, better writing. It's basically a huge leap forward for Superman. So if you, like me, don't like retro comics, but in fact, if you're even more me than I am, and you thought that starting in 1991 was a bit premature and just a bit too early for you, this is a great place to start. With that in mind, let's dive straight into it. The first arc is one that I like to call The Planet Returns. Now, this starts off with Superman issue 151, which is triangle number 46. Now, it's really important to notice that the cadence of these issues is staggering back one. If I go back to, here we are, 7th era, and if I scroll down, we'll see the last one we had here was issue 150, the oversized issue. However, the next issue is still Superman as well, 150. So what this kind of indicates is that the cadence of these issues being published in the real world is now staggering back by 1 week. I guess that comes in line with Loeb coming on board and maybe had some scripts already on deck for when that happened. So it's worth keeping that in mind. Issue 151 is a big one. This is the one where the Daily Planet is bought back off Lex Luthor for $1. And that's a development that happened so fast, I honestly thought that I'd missed something when I read it, but we didn't. It's just a really quick, soft reboot of what's going on. This issue also ends with the arrival of Mongul's son, also called Mongul. The next issue, which is triangle number 47, is Adventures of Superman 573. However, it doesn't mention Mongul's son, even though he was like literally on the last page of the preceding issue. Instead, this focuses around resolving issues about someone called Mr. Odets and a part of Metropolis called Hypersector. After that, we have Man of Steel 95, and then we have Action Comics 760. Again, like I say, if you notice, the sequence of titles on the top here is now different for the first time. Previously, when we've looked at these, as you can see here, they've been a different sequence, but now they're resequenced because the cadence of publication in the real world has changed. Then we're back to Superman 152. Mongul is in this one. We then have Adventures of Superman 574, Man of Steel 96, Action Comics 761, and Superman 153. This is notable in that it's the very first mention of the antagonist Imperiex. Remember that name for the end of this video and obviously tomorrow's event video as well. We then have Adventures of Superman 575. I'm not going to say much about it other than I really enjoyed this issue. Just to clarify, 153 is triangle number 5, 575 is triangle number 6, and the next one, Man of Steel issue 97, is triangle number 8. We've lost a triangle. Don't panic. I know what I'm doing. Just roll with me for now. Just go from triangle number 6 through to triangle number 8. That's what I would recommend here. And then the issue after that is Action Comics 762, triangle number 9. That's this arc, The Planet Returns. The next arc is an arc called Y2K. Now, the Y2K arc starts off with a one-shot called Superman Y2K, triangle number 7. Looks like we found our missing triangle. This bumper-sized 70-page issue kicks off this 5-issue arc. You should note that it's got some pretty dated CGI in it. Like it looks pretty bad when you're reading it now. It was a millennium thing, I guess. Back then, we were really impressed by CGI in any kind of form. Anyway, after the Y2K one-shot, we have Superman issue 154, Adventures of Superman 576, Man of Steel 98, and Action Comics 763. The ending of this, of Action Comics 763, is an important and powerful moment for Lex Luthor, if you're a Lex Luthor fan, or if you just want to follow through his arc. It's worth noting that this story, Y2K, is collected in a trade paperback, which is called Endgame. This entire trade paperback era is so dumb. I don't know why the trade paperback wasn't called Y2K, especially given there are other story arcs actually called Endgame. It's just stupid. Anyway, the next story arc is one called Smallville. This is Superman issue 155. Let's do a triangle check. That's triangle number 14. And then that's followed by Adventures of Superman 577, Man of Steel 99, and Action Comics 764. It's worth noting that whilst these 4 issues aren't explicit or even implicitly linked, they do all have a reference to Smallville on the cover, and so they're thematically linked to 4 individual Smallville stories that occur whilst Clark Kent is going through a much larger personal issue. I would also point out to everyone here, and I think it's in the note text, Action 764 is also told in a non-linear fashion. I originally got really confused. I thought I had a printing error on my issue, but the whole thing is written in a non-linear way. Okay, the next arc is one that I've decided to call Breakup, and that is issue 156, which is an interesting issue because the whole thing is narrated by Perry White. There's then Adventures of Superman 578. Man of Steel 100 is predictably a double-sized issue. Action Comics 765 is one you might be interested in if you're a collector for speculation purposes. It randomly features the Joker and Harley Quinn very prominently. It's important to note this is Harley's first ever appearance outside a Batman comic, and therefore her first ever appearance in a Superman comic, if you're interested in those sorts of things. And then finishing up the breakup arc, we have Superman 157. Let's do a triangle check. This is triangle number 22. Now, it's worth pointing out that in an insane decision from DC, all the issues in Smallville and Breakup are collected in a trade paperback called Till Death Do Us Part, that, as far as I'm aware, does not contain issue 157, even though it's the climax of this arc about Lois and Clark's relationship. This is yet another example of DC just letting the summer intern do the mapping here. In fact, this single issue, issue 157, remains uncollected in the slim trade paperbacks, even though it is collected in the later fatter trades that were released. It's just annoying. Um, anyway, the next slim collection is actually The Search for Lois Lane, as we can see here. So The Search for Lois Lane starts off, I would say, with this issue. This is Superman Metropolis, Secret Files and Origins. You should note that this is utterly separate to the Superman Metropolis maxi series that we're going to be talking about in the 10th era, way down on the bottom over here. So this is completely separate to that. This is just a one-shot. It's a good but non-essential side story. It hasn't got a triangle number, so don't worry about that. So the next issue of the main series we're looking at is Adventures of Superman 579, and then that's followed by Man of Steel 101. Man of Steel 101 mentions events that Hope and Mercy are up to in Superman's Secret Files, which I can now confirm shouldn't say Superman Secret Files, it should say Superman Metropolis, Secret Files and Origins, which is exactly what we just talked about. The final issue here in The Search for Lois Lane is Action Comics 766, which is a cool issue featuring Batman. And to be honest, I personally suspect this is what kind of pitched and set up and inspired the subsequent Superman Batman series that started relatively soon after this. Okay, the next part, the next story arc here is Critical Condition. This is Superman 158. In this, let's do a triangle check. This is triangle number 26. And in this references the event of JLA 80-page Giant number 2. This was a JLA one-shot, which is totally unrelated to the story, other than the fact that in one of its disconnected vignettes, the Atom does a bit of an inner space in Superman's body. He shrinks down, goes inside Superman. That's it. There's no reason to track it down or read it as part of your Superman reading order, even though, to be fair, JLA 80-page Giant Part 2 is actually quite good. Anyway, the second issue in Critical Condition is Adventures of Superman 580, then Man of Steel 102. You come across a villain here called Encantadora, and she refers to an event that actually happened early in Action Comics 760 at the start of this video, at the start of this era. And then we have Action Comics 767. Next up, we have some connective issues. So these connective issues, they start off with Superman 159. Let's do a triangle check. That's triangle 30. This features Green Lantern. It also reintroduces the character of Massacre. Yeah, I know. Like you, I thought he died in the trial of Superman. Apparently not. Anyway, it's also got more mentions of the coming of Imperiex. We then have Adventures of Superman 581. Man of Steel 103, which stars Supergirl, and Action Comics 768, which stars Shazam. Let's have a quick triangle check there. Yep, triangle 33. This then takes into a really interesting arc called Emperor Joker. Now, Emperor Joker is a lengthy, I want to say 9-issue arc. The first 4 issues here are technically called Superman Arkham as a story arc. But then in the middle, you have a story reveal, as we'll just show in a second. And then the whole arc is just generally called Emperor Joker. So the way it works, the first 4 issues is Superman 160, Adventures of Superman 582, Man of Steel 104, and Action Comics 769. That takes us to Triangle 37. As I say, those 4 issues comprise Superman Arkham, that's what they're called. But then you have the Emperor Joker one-shot, which is Triangle 38. Yes, it's Joker. Yes, it's in Superman. Yes, it's got a Superman triangle. And once you have that, it then kind of becomes unveiled as being an Emperor Joker storyline. And for that, you have Superman 161, Adventures of Superman 583, Man of Steel 105, and Action Comics 770. Quick triangle check, Action Comics 770 is triangle 42. Overall, this is like a daft comedy version of Marvel's Infinity Gauntlet story. I wasn't enamored with this. I thought it was going to be good. I was really looking forward to it. The only major thing that I would note here is the introduction of the new villain, who's someone called Ignition, and he's hella cool. But other than him, I don't know, man. Emperor Joker feels slightly overrated. It feels like a missed opportunity. It could have been a better story than it was. That said, it's quite important for the Superman mythos, and it does get referred to again in the future several times, so it is important to keep an eye on it. Next up, we have some connective issues, and here again we see some more evidence of this kind of untethering between the comics. This is quite a messy era where it makes it quite hard to establish a clear continuity because of this partial untethering. So I've done my best with the following, so just bear with me. Superman 162 is Triangle 43. It stars Aquaman. It has a cliffhanger ending that ends in Superman 163. So I'd read those two back to back, to be honest. After that, then I would just dive into something slightly more conventional. So I would go Adventure of Superman 584, which is Ron Stagdo, I think. Man of Steel 106. Now, this actually references Laurie's appearance in Superman 163, but she actually is referring to her appearance in Superman 162. Doesn't really make a difference as long as you read it in the sequence that I'm reading it in, it's fine. Then there's Action Comics 771, which is a Nightwing issue. And then there's Adventures of Superman 585. Man of Steel 107 is a Phantom Zone episode with the return of a key figure we've not seen in some time appearing off screen on the last panel. It's worth noting it also mentions the issues from the Supergirl series, issues 51 and 52, but you don't have to read those. Continuing on, the next story arc is President Lex. As I mentioned in the very introductory video, I tried to keep spoilers out of this, but if you have an arc called President Lex, there's very little I can do. The way this works is it starts off with an explicit two-parter in Action Comics called Kith and Kin Part 1 and Part 2. Kith and Kin Part 1 is Triangle number 50, and then Kith and Kin Part 2 is Triangle number 5. It's worth noting that they both star Talia al Ghul, and the second one, so Action Comics 773, is branded with a Road to the White House banner, the only time I have ever seen this branding used on any issues whatsoever. They're a good pair of issues, and issue 773 ends with Lex making quite a bold change to the way LexCorp works and is structured. So I'd strongly recommend reading those two back to back, but then you get back into the normal kind of rhythm of things as best we can. We've got Superman 164, which sees not only the return of Bizarro, but also somehow the return of Ignition from the Emperor Joker storyline. Anyway, this is the eve of the election, so it then continues on in Lex 2000. Now, it's worth keeping in mind that Superman 164 was triangle number 1, the triangles have renumbered here, and so Lex 2000 is actually triangle number 2. Even though it's not in the Superman series, it's such an important issue that gave it a triangle number. After that, I would recommend reading Superman Man of Steel 108, and that's marked as triangle number 4. You may notice we've skipped triangle number 3. We'll get to that in the next arc. Then there's Superman 165, which is just Xmas stories and vignettes, to be honest. And then we have an unnumbered one here, which is Secret Files President Luthor. It's well worth reading at the end of the President Lex arc, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, that's President Lex. Take a good look, soak it up. Please do check out the sheet and download it if you'd find it more useful. We then move into some connective issues. The first thing to point out is Adventures of Superman 586 is marked with triangle number 52, but that's incorrect. It should actually say triangle number 3 on it. It's an oversized issue. That doesn't excuse them making a mistake with the triangle numbers. Again, I'm blaming the DC intern and the fact that they hire people who just don't really care about comics. After reading Adventures of Superman 586, I would recommend reading the next issue of 587. Which is where Lucy Lane gives birth, Lex becomes president, and is concluded in issue 588, at which point Lucy has given birth. Keep in mind those triangle numbers are triangle number 52, which should be 3, and then 7, and then 11. So they're not consecutive, but you should read the issues consecutively. Anyway, getting back into slightly more normal reading, we've got Man of Steel 109. This is definitely set after Superman 165, and it's just the standard kind of Dickensian Christmas Carol story, you know, 3 ghosts, ways you could change and improve yourself, blah, 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 blah. The next issue after that is Action Comics 774, where Clark Kent essentially has a pretty hellish New Year's Eve with his father-in-law. Lois' dad sucks, basically. There's then Man of Steel 110. This is Lex's inauguration. And we then have Action Comics 775. Now, let's do a quick triangle check. Issue 110 is triangle 12, whilst issue 775 is actually Triangle S. Yes, it's an S and not a 13. That's because this is a legendary issue. Action Comics 775 is actually called What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. In fact, DC's 14th animated feature film, Superman vs. the Elite, was released in 2012 and is based on this issue. The Elite are clearly a pastiche of the Authority from Wildstorm, and I don't want to spoil the issue other than to say it's a fantastic dissection and exploration of Superman's ethics, morals, and values. I think this is great. Okay, right, ploughing on. We've got Return to Krypton as the next arc. Now, in terms of that, again, check out the order I've got here because it's not necessarily intuitive. We've got Superman 166, which is triangle number 10. This is a prelude issue. That's followed straight away by 167, which is triangle number 14. And we then get into a slightly more normal sequence. We have Adventures of Superman 589, Man of Steel 111, and Action Comics 776, which are triangles 15, 16, and 17, respectively. It's worth noting this arc not only introduces Krypto into the normal continuity, it's also the first clear indication that the bottle city of Kandor is actually originally a Kryptonian city, which is nice. Note that the trade paperback collection, which is called Return to Krypton, collects this arc and also the sequel arc that we're going to discuss in the next video about the next era, the 9th era. Moving on, the next part, which is story arc 13 of this, the 8th era, is called Lord of the Ring. It contains Superman 168, which is triangle number 18. It's important to note this references the events of the JLA Tower of Babel storyline, as well as refers to Bruce Wayne's new bodyguard Sasha Bordeaux from the recent Detective Comics. As you can see, I've got all this in the notes as well if you want to download the sheet itself. It's worth noting this is the first part of an explicit two-parter with Detective Comics 756, which I found to be an extremely annoying discovery at 2 in the morning. I had to then go out, track down the other issue. I haven't got all, well, at the point I was reading this, I didn't have all the Batman issues. So it was just another one I had to track down, which is irritating. But yeah, the second part here is Detective Comics 756, which of course has not got a triangle number on it. Following the Lord of the Ring arc, we've got a couple of connective issues. These are really straightforward. Adventures of Superman 590 and Man of Steel 112. If you do a triangle check, 590 is triangle 19. And Superman Man of Steel 112 is triangle 20. Please note we're now skipping Action Comics 777 for very good reason. Trust me on this, we just are. Anyway, next we have the Infestation arc. This is a 4-issue arc, Superman 169, Adventures of Superman 591, Man of Steel 113, and Action Comics 778. This 4-issue explicit arc is written by Marv Wolfman and drawn by Paco Medina, and is basically utterly self-contained, disconnected, and as far as I'm concerned, it even feels slightly out of continuity, but whatever, it goes here. That's followed by some connective issues. So as we can see here, story arc 16 of the 8th era is connective issues. There's 2 of them. There's Superman 170, which is triangle 26, and that references both the events of the ongoing JLA series in terms of the Tower of Babel arc and the aftermath of the Queen of Fables arc. The second connective issue is Adventures of Superman 592, where we meet Strange Visitor once again. What we have next is my own reading structure for the Worlds at War event. We're going to talk much more about Worlds at War in tomorrow's video, which is about the event itself. But this is the way I would structure this. There's 3 issues that very much feel like essential foreshadowing for our Worlds at War. We have Man of Steel 114, which is triangle number 28. And then we have that missing issue, Action Comics 777, and also Action Comics 779. Triangle 29 there. Action Comics 777 is something called the Cancer storyline. It's Cancer with a K. It's a villain, and it picks up threads from the Critical Condition story arc, but also leads smoothly into what I like to think of as the Palokistan arc. And then Action Comics 779 continues that Pakistan and Cancer story. Some crazy stuff happens to Superman in this issue. It is wild. absolutely wild. And that takes us to our last part of this era, the World at War tie-in issues. I'll just quickly dart over these. You can see them in sequence here. You got Superman 171, Adventures of Superman 593, Man of Steel 115, Action Comics 780, Superman 172, Adventures 594, Man of Steel 116, Action 781. This is notable because it contains the death of two very, very key long-running figures. Then you have Superman 173, Adventures 595. Man of Steel 117 is interesting because it's actually split into 3 chapters, as you can see here. It's split into chapters called Things Fall Apart, Chapter 2 is Entropy's Cauldron, and Chapter 3 is Nothing Left to Lose. And then finally, we have Action Comics 782. Let's do a triangle check. That is triangle number 41. To be honest, the World at War tie-ins kind of make some sense when you read them like this, but given the World at War event is quite interesting and quite good, and I have a reading guide for that, which is going to be tomorrow's video, I'd strongly recommend not bothering reading the Superman issues without reading just the entire event as a whole. It's a very Superman and Wonder Woman dominated event, so why would you not read it if you were interested in reading Superman? Right, there we have it. Long video, but tomorrow we're going to dive into the Our World at War event itself. And there we have it. In case you're interested in knowing where these resources are, so the guides, the maps, and so on, they're all available on my website. They're all available for free. You can go into the website, which is nogodsorkings.com, and download the Google Sheet for the Superman reading order, or you can go on the website and look at these reading maps for all the various DC events and a whole bunch of other things I've got on there to your heart's desire. If, however, you are interested in a written version of this guide, then it is available on Amazon. I've recently just self-published it. It is the cheapest possible tier you can get on Amazon. So it's 79 pence UK, 99 cents American, and so on. It's free if you're on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a free sample on the website as well. The reason I put this onto Amazon is kind of a proof of concept. I'm interested to see if people are interested in the written guides, whether or not people want to pick them up. And also it's a good way for me to bat off all the people that are going to be in the comments asking for a Batman guide. If you want a Batman guide, I don't really particularly have any interest in doing one, but I will do one if this book gets 500 reviews. So if this book gets 500 5-star reviews, then I will start doing a Batman reading guide at some point. I don't think that's going to happen, but there we are. Of course, feel free to support the channel by picking this up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, the best way to support the channel is by picking up one of my other books, which isn't a non-fiction reading guide. It's actually a fictional, completely original superhero story. It's prose, so not a comic or words, but it's about superheroes in just a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic dystopic idea. The first 4 books of the series are out, and if you want to support, please pick that up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay classy.